let's go back to a few stories. Here's our Ernst Wagner. We know a lot about Ernst. Ernst was born into a rather dysfunctional and impoverished family in Germany. His father was a chronic alcoholic who died when Ernst was about 4 or 5. His mother struggled to support the family, often resorting to prostitution to feed the kids. He went to school where he was very much excluded. He was poor, he was grubby, and he was generally seen as an untouchable, really. Surprisingly, he did very well at primary school. So well that he actually got to the gymnasium. That's the next level up. And again, he was excluded, treated with contempt, but did very well. In fact, by the time he reached the age of matriculation, the period of when you would qualify for university, he did extremely well. He could have gone to university, but he wasn't going to go to university because his parents, his mother, had no money at all, and he couldn't go. There were no grants in those days. What he could do was go to teachers' training college, because that was subsidised by the government, and so off Ernst goes to teachers' training college. Now, he always thought that was a bit below him. He developed ambitions to be the new Goethe. He was going to be the new great German writer. But in the meantime, he'd be a teacher. So anyway, he finished his teacher's training, went off to a small village called Mulhouse to do his teacher's training. And one night, he got very worried about his masturbation. He kept on seeing doctors about his masturbation. And we know what the doctors said. They said, "Oh, don't worry, lad, everyone does it." It's quite wrong that doctors at the time necessarily thought this was some evil. They didn't. Everyone reassured him. He wasn't going to believe them. So he was very worried about masturbation. So he tried to resist it. He also got rather fond of boozing. So one night he's pissed. He's staggering back from the pub towards the place where he lodges, and he goes into one of the barns, and he has intercourse with an animal. He's never disclosed what sort of animal it was, whether it was a horse or a cow, we're not sure, or possibly even a sheep, or various things on choice. But he did seem to have intercourse with an animal, that seems to be certain. And then he staggers off home. Next morning he wakes up, he's horrified. He thinks people might have known about it. He gets very, very worried about this, buys himself a gun just in case he's denounced, in which case he would immediately shoot himself. Anyway, he gets a little bit calmed down after a few months, and then decides he's got to do something about this, so he marries the innkeeper's daughter. It's a very good solution, really. Cows on one side, innkeeper's daughter on the other, boozing also a problem. It's quite a nice solution. Anyway, that solves his problem for a while, and he gets promoted, and he goes off to a large school in a nice big city. I've forgotten which one now. I think it's Frankfurt. Anyway, goes off there, and he progresses quite well for a while, but he doesn't get promoted. He and his wife have 5 children. Okay. And he's able to support them. But he keeps on writing his poems and sending them off. They don't get published. He writes his novels, sends them off. They don't get published. He composes his plays, sends them off. They don't get published. And more he believes his failure to get published and his failure to get promotion are because people know about the incident in the barn. How do they know about the incident in the barn? Because the people from Mulhouse have been coming to the city and telling people about it and spreading other rumours about it. And this develops over a period of 10 years. It's all in his diaries until he feels that there is no hope. His life is destroyed. But before he kills himself, he's going to take revenge on the people at Mulhouse who have wrecked his life by spreading the rumours, which, of course, according to him, weren't rumours. He also is a believer in degeneration, which was a very common theory at the time. So he fears that his children will finish up degenerates like himself, because he saw himself as a brilliant degenerate. So before he goes off to Mulhouse with his 2 guns, he kills his children, he kills his wife, and he travels to Mulhouse and he starts shooting people. His plan was to shoot as many as he could, then go to a nearby chateau, clamber up to the top of the tower and set himself alight on the top of the tower. Very Wagnerian, really. He'd finished like as a sort of up there on the fire. Well, that didn't quite work out. Killed quite a lot of people, injured quite a lot of people, but they overwhelmed him, and he finished up in a psychiatric hospital for the rest of his life. Now, he had a delusional disorder, paranoia, no question about it. And there wasn't a great deal. There was some publicity, and we know a lot about it because Galp, who became his psychiatrist, wrote extensive documents about Wagner. So here's our first one, and he is mad. The next big one is Charles Whitman. There are some in between. Let me just... Oops, no, I'll get back one. So there's Wagner. Norman List. He went out into the botanical gardens just across the road, our botanical gardens in Melbourne in 1924, and started shooting women. Killed 4, injured a number of others, then committed suicide. So we actually get the second one. And then Unruh, and then Whitman. Whitman is the most important of all, because Whitman, who went up to the top of the Texas University Tower and began shooting down below, got enormous publicity. The New York Times gave 4 columns to it. Every television, every radio was more important in those days, was going on about the killing at the Texas Tower. He became enormously famous. And later, not only did he become famous, but they made one of the early docu-dramas about it. Here it is, The Deadly Tower, with Kurt Russell. Still a cult movie. It's actually not a bad movie, apart from the fact they try and do the decent thing. They have a Mexican policeman who's the embodiment of family virtues and decency, and we have Kurt Russell as the killer. Kurt Russell says almost nothing. He's just a brooding presence throughout the whole thing, up there with his rifle, shooting people dropping over dead. But the problem is, Kurt Russell is absolutely fascinating. The only thing that's really interesting about this film is Kurt Russell. I mean, there you are. There's our Kurt. With his brooding presence. Note the bandana. We don't know whether he wore a bandana or not. I hope this is pure coincidence. But he became enormously famous. Okay, well, let's just go back one. Again, go back to this thing. I thought I'd reproduced it. Boom, boom, there we are. A few months later, the first copycat, Bob Smith, went to his college, started shooting people, killed a number of them, then shot himself. Left a note saying he was doing it in honour of his hero, Charles Whitman. Okay? There we are. These massacres and the killers are given extensive coverage by the media at the time. This starts with Whitman. Immediately following such massacres, there are multiple reports of shootings only vaguely related to the massacres where they reprise all the details of the original massacre. So they get the publicity, then they get the publicity again and again as minor events are linked to the massacre. And an ongoing existence for the killer is established in cyberspace, and they may acquire a fan base. And it works. Net fame. Here, Charles Whitman. 3 million plus hits recently on Google. Macfarlane Burnet, Nobel Prize winner that year for medicine, 150,000. And most of those, I think, are to the Macfarlane Burnet building rather than Macfarlane Burnet. Such is life. Martin Bryant, 55 million. The Australian who won the Nobel Prize for Medicine, 18 million. Not bad, but it ain't no 55 million. So, if you want real fame, a massacre's the way. And they get their fans. This is from one of the many websites dedicated to worshipping, there's no other word, the mass killers. But they struck back. Even my brain cannot fully grasp the courageousness of these heroes. To stand up to an entire society, capitals in the original, and stick to your beliefs and make the ultimate sacrifice is an act of total heroism. They should be given medals of honour. It is irrelevant if you believe in their actions, because it is bravery of the highest order. Bum-ba-dum-ba-dum, and on it goes. Okay, so they have people who think they are models to be admired. And the media is beginning to wake up to this. These some academics, media academics. Immediate coverage of mass shooting, not only glorification but also demonisation, have to be avoided, as well as simplification of the motive to prevent persons at risk identifying with the perpetrator. To discourage mass shooting, more needs to be done to deprive the killer of an audience, etc. And two of our local journalism academics, mass killers often aim to achieve